out of the list. It's one that we really did some due diligence on. So we partnered up with them, and the great thing about that is that that is a third party, validating our solution. So you can have a technology or solution in place, but if it's not validated by QSA, then it really does you no good. So we wanted to make sure that what we were providing our customers was already QSA certified. And I think that goes a long way to let you know that we've actually taken that approach of not just taking a technology and trying to map it to a requirement. We've flipped it around and said, okay, what can we do to meet each of these individual requirements? So as I stated earlier, there's a lot of moving parts to being PCI compliant. That includes the auditors. It includes the service providers. Potentially you may have your cardholder data environment at a co-location facility. You might be doing it in-house. And that goes along with the physical controls. Are you meeting the physical controls that are set forth in the PCI DSS? There are co-location facilities, data centers that are have their report on compliance and are fully PCI compliant. You don't necessarily have to have that. You just have to meet those physical control standards set forth in the PCI DSS. And then again, there is the technology, absolutely critical, but as Brian stated earlier, definitely not the only thing that goes into this. Again, it's the processes, the procedures. And on top of that, what we offer, a fully managed service, the personnel who are watching your network 24/7, 365. So, there's 176 requirements, and definitely not a small task. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you kind of a brief overview of the actual requirements, and we'll dig in just to one of those requirements. And we can always do a separate talk and drill down into each individual requirements, but I want to kind of keep it at a high level and not get into the details, at least with this presentation. So if you look here, you can see that there are 12 overall requirements set forth in the PCI DSS, and you can kind of combine them into 6 high-level items, if you will. So number 1 and 2 is essentially build and maintain a secure network. 3 and 4, it's all about protecting the cardholder data. 5 and 6 is maintaining a vulnerability management program. 7, 8, and 9 is implementing a strong access control measures. 10 and 11 has to do with regularly monitoring and testing networks. Obviously, one thing that we're really, really good at. And 12 is maintaining an information security policy. So if we take a look, I just like to drill into one of these. I don't want to drill into every single one. But if we just take firewall management, for instance, so requirement 1, install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect your cardholder data. Now, you might think, well, that sounds pretty straightforward. I just put a firewall in and off we go. But you will notice that there are more things that actually are involved with this. Now, you will also notice that we list what the customer needs to provide as well. So out of the 176 requirements, we provide coverage for 164, or 95% of the total requirements. So there are some basic assumptions that we've made that the customer will actually take responsibility for. For instance, as you can see here for requirement 1, we specify for requirement 1, the end user must provide in the cardholder data environment, and we'll talk about the network segmentation and minimizing your exposure, is that we expect the customer to have an endpoint, a personal firewall. That's something that we don't provide. Another one is wireless security is deployed for all wireless access points. And again, what I talked about earlier, any hosting providers that you have must be PCI compliant, or at least your servers that are transmitting, processing, or storing credit card information must be in a place where the physical controls are outlined and set forth in the PCI DSS. So as part of the solution, we provide our firewall service, again, talking about requirement 1. Now, outside of preventing access from untrusted networks, the requirements state that all firewall rules must be set to deny by default and allow only necessary traffic. And for those particular protocols, IP addresses, there needs to be specific documentation as to the need for having a particular port open to the CDE. And the CDE, again, is the cardholder data environment. Next, there's a requirement that states that the saved or backup configuration must be the exact same as the running configuration for your firewall. So we achieve this by our firewall integrity service, which tracks the changes to the configuration and also ensures that the configurations are the same at all times. And one of the reasons for that, if the firewall were to go down and you brought it back up, you want to make sure that the same firewall rules are in place if for some reason your firewall went down and came back up. In addition, to document the changes made to the firewall, a detailed diagram of the network architecture showing all connections, wireless devices, ingress and egress points within the CDE. And on top of that, we need a list of all the connections to the CDE, and that needs to be reviewed quarterly for differences from results that happen with vulnerability scanning. So again, this is not something, I just want to make sure this is not something that is totally new to us. We actually have already implemented and already have been doing a lot of this, but there are some things that we had to implement in order to meet these individual requirements. For instance, when someone calls into the SOC and they want to make a firewall change, we will make that change right there and then with them on the phone. But we also need to know and track in a ticket why that change, what's the business requirement for those changes being made. Again, and same with the network diagram that I talked about. We have network diagrams for most of our customers. Now, for PCI, it is mandated in order to be compliant that we have an updated network diagram. So we're going to really enforce this for our PCI customers, that we have up-to-date network diagrams, and you'll see a sample network diagram in one of the reports coming up. So again, it's not something new to us. It's just there's some extra procedures that we had to add in order to make sure that we're meeting these requirements. So again, the requirements set forth in the PCI DSS, let's say, we have to do quarterly reviews with you, again, specifically talking about requirement 1, to make sure that any changes that were made are documented, and we have to make sure that a vulnerability scan is run against the firewall. And if there are any vulnerabilities that are found in doing that, we have to make sure those get fixed, documented, all of that stuff. So it's really a pretty involved process. But again, this is a managed service. This is something that we are handling for you. So that's one of the things that sets us apart with this service. Now again, just real quick, we can, if we look at requirement 2, again, we list out what we were responsible for, and then what the end user is responsible for. Now we have a much more detailed diagram of each of the requirements, and when you subscribe to the service, we'll go in depth with you on that. So so again, for each of these requirements, we let you know what's expected of you and what we're going to provide. And what's expected of the customer is really nothing beyond what probably is already in place. So a primary theme with our solution, Brian touched on it, I've touched on it, it's not just the technology, it's actually the policies and procedures and the expert personnel watching your network, taking actions on your behalf 24/7, 365. So real quick, I just want to touch on the technologies that are part of our PCI Complete solution. One is our firewall service, our intrusion detection and prevention system, SSL VPN, multi-factor authentication, and multi-factor authentication is kind of combined with our VPN service. So along with our